Good morning, everyone. You're listening to Turtle Island News with Tracey Kennedy. We are live today on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Wolfspirit Radio, and TurtleIslandNews.info. We are continuing on with the Code of the Matrix. We are officially at Part 7. You can see that TurtleIslandNews.info. Look at reason number, I think we're at 86 right now. It'll be under part 5 and 6. 6 took a little longer than I thought, so we're going to continue that. Kind of a synopsis. Remember that when we're looking at history, because so much hasn't been told to us, and some things have been incredibly manipulated. Even some of my big heroes like Sitchin and Jordan Maxwell and Tessarian, when they talk about history, it's a little skewed from certain other groups. We've gone into the dual society and what a big part Blavatsky played. So Blavatsky was the first person to write the myth of Lemuria. And I hate to dissuade all you people who have gone out and bought your Lemurian star crystals. The first time Lemuria was ever mentioned was actually when they were trying to talk about the theory of evolution. They were looking for a place that the lemurs came from that would explain how there are lemurs in certain parts of the Indian Ocean, Africa, China, how there's lemurs all over. So they were looking for the land of the lemurs. Later, Blavatsky took that Lemuria and made it into an entire mythos. A mythos that is copied almost word for word by some of our advanced teachers. Not just her work, but Albert Pike's work, too, has become part of our mythos. Lemuria, their seed crystals, their advanced civilization. Now, we've talked about advanced civilizations all over the world because I keep finding them. And there are many myths. There was one called Mu, M-U, and that was mostly Pacific Island people talking about. We have many stories of Atlantis as well, and that's all over the world. As we've spoken of before, what really gives things power is our belief in them. So whether or not any of these things are true, we have put a lot of energy into them. And people have made a lot of money telling us these fake stories. It's like our language has been mutated and used for specific sounds to be repeated over and over again. It's why we have so many words that sound the same but are spelled differently. They sound the same because they want us to repeat these words. As we're going through, I want you to keep something in mind, because after this series is done, and we've got quite a few more parts to it, we're going to be talking about Saturn and the cube. We've kind of brushed over this a little bit, but if you get a chance to look at the Cassini pictures of Saturn, what you will notice is on the North Pole, many of the images that we have on this planet as spiritual symbols are from there. There's the hexagon, there's a polygon, there's a circle, there's a rotating, and they call it a cloud, but they're not quite sure what it is. And inside is a box. This is on the North Pole. On the South Pole, it looks like a great eye. Saturn also has a ring, and we all know Saturn's rings, and this is in so many of our myths. Saturn's rings also has an invisible ring that can only be seen by infrared lighting. So I don't know the story of the rings and how we got that, but it's actually true in a sense, because it takes fire, the infrared light, it's red, right? To see this invisible ring. So Saturn actually does have one ring to rule them all, and it has a lot of esoteric imagery there that we get most of our signs, the pentagram, all of these things. So keep that in mind, and if you want to research that a little bit, look at the cube and Saturn. Very interesting stuff, and we will go into that in depth. Where we are now, we have talked about the ancient gods and how their names are being used in all of our languages. I think what we could say for a fact that all the ancient books, when they talk about God, this God seems both good and evil. States that in all the old books. What you can really do, I guess, is just hope that you haven't read that one and that comes back with more questions. Every time you look at it, you have more questions. Most Christians, Muslims, and Jewish people, all of them, never really read a complete book of these things. So, when their pastors come up and shake hands with you and smile, just say, praise, Lord, brother. P is P or P-I, that means sun, like the sun in the sky, and Phi, by the way, is moon. These words, too, have been used. And why should the Lord be raised? What could be? Well, could this be the final plan? To raise their Lord? Raise? Let's look at this a little bit. Now we go into the phoenix myths that are all over the world. Again, reason 86. The phoenix is used in occult symbolism due to a hidden story of all the saviors that are descended to the underworld, and they will rise and return. This is the story of Tammuz, Mithras, Jesus, Quetzalcoatl, Horus, Adonis, many others. The American eagle was going to be a phoenix, but this was deemed far too obvious since Europe had always used the phoenix in its insignia, and they do not want the settlers to know that the British were silently orchestrating the development of the Americas. The phoenix is also a hidden sign of the Phoenicians, who designed much of our corrupted language. This is where we get the term phonics. I learned some default answers that I picked up along the way from other people just talking about it, and they were quite sinister, as a matter of fact. Of course, the things you have to learn, and that people have to learn to be a good pastor and bear fruit and talk to other people, are pretty insidious. And we will skip, for now, the Christian God and just say he's male, as all of the big three are. But this is the obvious clue here, that it isn't the Most High, the ultimate creator, being gendered is erroneous, seeing that it would not have, well, it would have to be way more than a he or a she to create multiple universes, multi-dimensions. But we will go for it anyway, not wanting to begin digging into his story, history. So this God did not find it important to save a family from grief and increase an old lady's faith. He would rather not heal the children and leave the old lady hanging on a limb, which makes no sense to me. So we will examine what happens here more closely as we take the journey into the doghouse. I'd like to state that it is clear that only one of two things are happening. Either the God cannot do it because of a lack of power, or does not want to do it. He does not want to just wave his hand and remove the problems here for some unknown and strange reason called the ill will. After all, the God described in the Bible has so much power, it can just wave its pinky and poof, better world, right? Most of the stories in the ancient texts pretty much allude to that. So the easier route would be, of course, to heal the child, which would build the old lady's faith even more, thus possibly convincing the parents of the sick child to attend church. But that is often what does not happen. In fact, seldom any real miracles anymore, but lots of new cars. Why? My personal favorite has always been people asking, like in The Secret, God, please give me a new car. I would think, oh really? Did he give you a gas card for that new Hummer too? So as you see, many pastors out there, just wasn't cut to carry the cloth after a while if they start looking into this. There are many that have contacted Shekinah, and other various unexplained beings. At that point, I personally would have been out the door. Now, due to the paranormal experiences that I have had in my life with beings in and outside of the church, because, I was from a church-going family, and after I had been asked to leave several different denominations when I was a kid, Mom just said, I don't care which one you go to, just pick one. Through all this, I was at least able to come to the conclusion that there is still something alive, invisibly orchestrating itself in all of these churches. It wasn't all catharsis here, as they would like to make you believe spirits actually make contact. So I've learned a valuable lesson, which is what looks good does not always come from good. First off, because the language is backwards, when you say God, you really say dog. And don't laugh. This is something I'm very serious about, like the plan. Many people have been curious as to why God's name backwards spells dog. For a moment, while carrying a certain cross of whatever I'm studying at the time, I too tried to make sense of this. So I learned the notion that the dog was God's opposite, because dogs were very bad, which makes no sense whatsoever, since many dogs are very kind and loving. Plus there's much more evil things than dogs described in the Bible, like demons or the devil, which would be more like God's opposite, you would think. I can only conclude for a while that they all do begin with the letter D. So let's just think for a moment. If you were an all-intelligent God, and you intended for your name to always mean good, you should probably make it something like, I don't know, Y-A-Y. Yay. That no matter if a person pronounced it backwards or forwards, they would still get the same thing, right? Surely the creator of multiple universes, resplendent and furnished, would know that if his lowly creation could figure it out. Not to mention the creator of everything cannot be confined within names, numbers, vibrations emitted from a human mouth. And if it did, it would be much too powerful for us to assimilate and reproduce. It would be worth it to conclude that the gods, who are separate from the Most High, know exactly what they are doing, down to a quantum level. So again, look at Sirius satellite radio. And we've talked about this. Now, reason 87. And I have a picture there. This is the dog star, Sirius A, the star of illumination for many secret societies, including the Egyptians. They called it Sothis. Its symbol is the 5-pointed star. There's also Sirius B, called the Pup, or esoterically the Great Five. This is Anubis. 5 is the sacred number of Atlantis as well. So as I begin to look at a lot of terminology being used in certain places, it seemed to me, well, it just took me closer, perhaps, to some truth, as long as I was willing to take it literally, which is different and difficult. Our ability to discern what is happening is deteriorating because we think everything is just a coincidence, even though there is no such thing. It is of value to make note of syncs, synchronicity, or déjà vus in your life, also dreams. This is how the unseen ones communicate without swooping down on you in full flight, scaring the crap out of you, which would not accomplish anything, certainly not the purpose intended. Many ask why the Most High does not come down here and just straighten things out. We say, shall the creation ask the Creator, why did you make me this way? Some even further claim that He did. I will venture out for a quick moment to imagine what the Most High is. This is, of course, very unwise, since I'm not trying to comprehend such a storehouse of catamount visages of the ionic beams, the whys, the 5 puny senses that we're using, and add insult to injury. I have to use English words. But here goes. Pure, unrestricted energy. Thus, if the Most High arrives anywhere in our galaxy, well, welcome to the next life, because nothing can withstand such a force based on common sense of physics, mathematics. Anything that has come saying it is the Most High is a deceiver, and the truth cannot be found with them, and their words prove it, and their works prove it. Notice that when people pray, as the word indicates, they are actually saying they are becoming the victim and are being hunted. Pray. That is, after all, what pray is. So who is the predator? Could it be a wolf? Where the pastor stands is called a pulpit, but what is being pulled into the pit here? They call themselves saints, which is an anagram for Satan's. All books of power indicate the Most High is inside of you. So why do so many people, when they pray, imagine that God lives somewhere outside of them, possibly in the sky? This becomes one of many errors we make when we channel our energy to make contact. As it teaches in religions where chakra systems are at least discussed, focusing internally and concentrating on certain energy centers located in your body is one sure way to enlightenment. Once you have accomplished that, you begin to manipulate the energy through your chakras, which are the organs of your soul. Full activation of the chakras will bring an individual some clear, unadulterated contact with the Most High. The real miracle is performed by one who has trained their mind to bring such phenomenon without the assistance of external being, of indivisible essence, I guess, causing the phenomenon to take place. This does take a certain level of dedication that many have tried to get around. The result of cutting spiritual corners here has always been even greater setbacks to one's growth. There is no easy way, because it is not hard. It has been made to seem like it's hard. Once finally emancipated from being dependent upon the rules and the false impediments of natural growth, you will clearly see our purpose here is to become complete, not fused and packed together with followers who possess nothing of their own creative thoughts and are just reciting like robots that they have learned from those before them, that we're also incorrectly being led without behaving like clones. But leaders led, it, even the word itself shows you that that is a heavy burden. On the flip side, when a person's prayers or praise, they are in fact relinquishing their power and beginning a process of servant and master. Our planetary ether is saturated with multiple beings on various frequencies above what the untrained eye can see. We see very small spectrum of the visible light here. The ear can detect some of the beings, which will sound like a ringing in the ear or the sound of bells. These beings have developed an outer aurora encasing their body that makes them invisible. Thus they can carry out their work on the material realm without notice. Their voices are whispers that people imagine as their own thoughts unless they are guided. The prayer of the individual, which is often known before the request, is taken into account, and a design begins. This is the power of the all-seeing eye. We have made way too much evidence linking Christianity faith to Atlantean, Egyptian, Sumerian rites, sometimes being directly plagiarized from its origins. Now remember, the people in the 1800s, this is where a lot of our mythos is coming from now. A lot of it, like the Lemuria stuff, the Pleiades stuff, all of this stuff comes from there. And in hindsight, they didn't know that there's a place much, much older, it looks like, than all the Egyptian sculptures, all the Sumerian stuff. Göbekli Tepe, which was designed, and at this point they've only excavated 10% of it. Looks like it was made purposely for us to find. It was made and then buried completely, and at this point it looks like it's the oldest thing we know. We're seeing more and more pyramid structures, of course, being found all over the planet. Are they coming up at this time because our ancestors made them to be here at this time? What if there was some disaster? Wouldn't you want your kids to know about it, even if your kids were going to be thousands and thousands of years apart? What am I saying in this case? Is if a person does their research, which can be done on the internet, and they still do not find the above statement true, what I just said, they can be victim of mind control, which is okay. We can work through that, of course, but let us remember that the secret to mind control is never letting the person realize they are under that influence. When the ego is created, it will never admit that something like that could happen. It thinks it's way too smart. You know, we've talked about that before with our meditations. You know, if we have a person that's making us angry, or we hate that person, so you have two problems now, or three problems. You have the hate, which the other person isn't doing, you're doing that. You have the thought of your hating, and the third thought that thinks it's smarter than the other thoughts. It's a perpetual system. It is in place, keeping you stagnant, mind-controlled, and the ego. It is time we realize steel sharpens steel. The only person that can fix you is you. As the book says, one should make sober estimate of themselves every day to be sure they are not off the path and have not deluded themselves, all puffed up with pride, which comes immediately before the destruction. Reason 88. Every part of the physical mind has been mapped. One will have to work with their spiritual mind to avoid all the delusions. We have had more and more reports of scientists coming out and saying something I think we all know, that they can make us do anything. So just using our mind, which we're told is in our head, will not be enough. And let's examine why it could be possible that the term God is more of a hidden term, which traces to the land of Canaan and many other trails. Throughout our recent history, lots of attention has been put on the land of Canaan. This is the so-called promised land of the Hebrews, Most literature on Canaan is very non-descriptive as to the people that originally lived there. This is, of course, done on purpose. Their religious beliefs, artifacts, along with the true natures, often remains hidden and obscure. After much guidance, pieces begin to come together, though. Now, according to history, when the cursed Cain slew his brother Abel, he was marked with a sign, so that all could see Cain. All that saw him would know that he had been marked by God. Thus they could not destroy Cain. Does it not seem odd that Cain has killed his brother, and he is given a symbol of great protection? Just another one of those Bible concoctions, where the true story is most likely an esoteric mystery embedded with hidden symbols here that's taking it literally. It makes no sense whatsoever. They do much of this in this Bible. It is a wonder that the book is legible at all. Generally, the member is trained heavily in blind faith to counteract the feelings which occur when continuously uncovering all the inconsistencies here. Enoch, son of Cain, who wrote more literature relating to the fall, for a profound reason, noted that this was the double cross. Double cross? The cross was used in Gnosticism, taught in Gnosis, Crete, which is also odd according to the Bible at this point. Only 4 people have been created, one of which is dead. So Adam and Eve and Cain are the only people spoken of. So here's the scripture. Genesis chapter 4, 16 to 17. When Jehovah set up a sign for Cain, in order that anyone finding him would not strike him. With that Cain went away from the face of Jehovah, took up residence in Nod, the land of fugitiveness in the east of Eden. Afterward Cain had intercourse with his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. Then he engaged in building a city, and called the city's name by the name of his son, Enoch. Once Cain was evicted, it says he left into the land of Nod, land of fugitiveness. And he knew a wife. This mysterious land of Nod I have traced to the land of Canaan, which became Palestine, then Israel. In Palestine they have discovered caves completely excavated by what appears to be a very advanced race for the time that must have been of great stature, according to how the caves were laid out. They were tall, they were big. Our biblical story of Abraham also starts off in Ur of Chaldea. And Abraham, when leaving Ur, enters Canaan, where he experiences his first encounter with the God of the Bible. This is also the reason the children of Israel deemed Canaan the land that was promised to them through the covenants made by Abraham with Abraham by Jehovah that had to be fulfilled. Beside the Bible's report, the record reflects that after the destruction of Atlantis, the few that survived set out in ships. We've talked about these stories. The stories of the ships seems worldwide. It goes on to say that many of them reached land in an area we now know, it looks like, as Canaan. They began rebuilding their empire, warring, of course, with various people currently inhabiting the land. It goes on to report many sailed further into indigenous territories inhabited by various Indian tribes. Many of the tribes recorded the arrival of the Atlanteans and reported that they taught them various sciences, mathematics, and of course a new religion. Being more technically and spiritually advanced, natives began to worship them as gods and knew them as the feathered serpents because of the religion they taught and the appearance of their deity. Since there has been so much talk of these serpents, we have to at some point approach the question, are all serpents and reptilians evil? I can only answer this with, are all men evil? What follows is now perspective, and think of this. If you were born a lion, it is natural for you, it would not be natural for you to behave like a sheep. You are a lion. Obviously, not so we all have different characters that at times directly oppose the nature of other species. Just as when ants invade your kitchen because you spilled some sugar, you become their apocalypse when you wipe out hundreds of them with a swipe of a cloth, drowning them as you clean the rag, watching them go down the drain. Many would say this is different because they are not sentient. We would say all things that move are endowed with a divine spark. And if you could split it, it would create an explosion, such as you had never seen. This was done so you would marvel at creation and then reflect back on the Creator, of course. Tell you the truth, there are high life forms that still call Earth home. They are interwoven in this fabric, and to separate from it would be spiritual death to them. Earth is also our current reference point. If it is removed, it is possible for our memories, our memories will be disposed of when we, incarnate again. We'll have to start over. This is, of course, if we continue to reincarnate after what happens in the future, who knows. The best that could happen or hope for is that another repeat of life with no memories, in which, I'm not ready for. We must admit Earth life is dangerous after a while. In our current atmosphere of illusion, it's easy to bring about so many excesses. We not only destroy things around us, but we also bring about the degradation and degeneration of our very souls. Experience is not the only thing the soul needs to grow. In fact, experience is a relatively small proportion. When you consider the soul can eat elements, essence, gaseous things found in the atmosphere, we must build a superhighway down to the path of truth. Why, do you think? Now, going back in the histories that we are told, during the invasion of Anu, also known as Anna, life forms from another constellation called Nibiru came to Tiamat, Earth, to subdue it. Now again, Sitchin's work and Blavatsky's work. We're going over it because they want us to believe this. And I would just ask that you be careful where you put your beliefs, because lie. Tiamat, known as the dragon, fought the Anunnaki, who fought against and back against while using highly advanced weapons that ultimately split Tiamat. This is the story in the Bible of the dragon fighting the angels as well. Many of our religions are this Anunnaki propaganda. And, as we've said before, it means heaven. He means earth. That's all. It says nothing about falling here. Words do not mean that. Their main interest, we've been told, were our natural elements, especially the spirit of man and women turned gold. Several situations ensued against these beings, even a mutiny amongst themselves. These beings are responsible for the Nephilim stories of the Bible. They altered a race of what appeared to be then pure spiritual beings of various types into spirit forms encased in flesh, which they could slave and master over. They were said to be a few amongst them that did not like the way the humans were being abused, and thus began to teach their favorites the ways of enhancing their bodies by linking them to their spirit, to become as powerful as the Anunnaki, if not even more powerful, since they had spirit element in us given by the Most High. These mysteries of enhancing the body later became known as the wisdom of the serpent. The correct term would be the wisdom of the spirit, who many relate to the serpent because of its spiraling movement and fiery nature. As things began to intensify, word got back to Anu, the leader of the Anunnaki, about the humans and their abilities. Anu sent Marduk in a ship, which is Planet X, and we'll go into that again later, to handle Tiamat, called the Great Serpent and her offspring, the humans, once and for all. This ship, the size of a planet, similar to George Lucas's Death Star, which actually still looks like one of the moons of Saturn again. And in the Planet X mythos, when, Sitchin points and says, this is our solar system. No, that is Saturn with the moons around it. And one of them looks like the Death Star. But this marked the last crossing of Naribu anyway. So still sounds like Saturn. Marduk used a weapon known in the tablets as a net, also called the net of Indra. This is some type of atmospheric net that keeps souls trapped on Earth, Tiamat, not allowing them to continue their evolution. Marduk, who is Ra, set up the pyramid systems, which I explained before. Ra then became the ruler of the underworld, which is a place where souls go when they remain trapped in the net, but have expired their current physical body, thus they are waiting on a new one. This is reincarnation. This is a curse. And you can see clearly the Egyptian god Anubis serves Anu and is one of them. The Queen of England, who is the ruler of the world, has instilled the worship of Ra, Anubis, and the rest of the Anunnaki pantheism under various Sumerian, Egyptian, Hebrew guises, basically. This is why religion is so limited, except for the few who have become high initiates. It is them, or to them, that their duty is to continue to suppress us. They are doing this at the bidding of their god Anu, who is returning to the planet. We were told he was returning with the Planet X by 2012. And this is when one of the storms started on Saturn. Well, actually 2010. And it's ongoing. It's not stopping. There are many high places here on Earth, and they still serve Ra, such as the Arabs in Dubai. And you can see the pictures there. It all looks like the same thing. Now, Reason 89, parliaments are tools for the Anunnaki. They run mystery schools, governments, and practically the entire globe. I have yet to find anyone who opposes these forces. They are supremacists, such as the ideas of the Talmud discusses about the Gentiles. Thus, if you are not in leagues with them, you are only a resource that can be abused. Christianity has hatched to seem as if it is opposed to all this. However, it's just another plan to keep humans powerless, thus continuing to stall anyone from activating by denying them information of the chakras. We will face the Anunnaki in what will appear to be the first ET contact on Earth. I'm pretty sure of this. Currently, it seems Earth will face utter destruction and enslavement by them. However, Most High holds the key element of setting such plans to ruin. You must at least individually entreat the Most High by looking in. The Anunnaki themselves appear to be originally reptilian. However, they have blended with various life essences, and thus their appearance vary. In addition, the Anunnaki themselves seldom interact with humans directly. They use their underlings, who are human infused with Anunnaki genes, and in that state they are wholly indebted to the Anunnaki and are controlled by them through mental, collective cellular connection, the hive mind, the Borg. Other names of the Anunnaki and their offspring: Anakim, and yes, this is why Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader in the Star Wars series. They are Celtic, Tuatha, De Danin, sons of Dan or Danu. They are offspring and servants of the Sumerian Ea or Ea. This is why the new name for our planet is Ea, Earth. 3 wise men came from East, and major Christian celebration is on Easter. They are Sumerian El, which is Saturn, Akkadian Elu, Babylonian Elu, the English Elf, Yelef, called by their worshippers the Shining Ones, or is it the Sinning Ones? They altered man, a downgrade, calling them Lulu, meaning mixed one, and Adapta, model man, who the Hebrews call Adam. Now, according to the Sumerian text, Tiamat's seas were full of souls that could be harvested. This is the hidden meaning behind the Fisher King and Jesus being called the Fisher of Men. When the planet X divided Tiamat into 2 parts, she released an ocean of souls, or cosmic essence, into the heavens, into the cosmos. The Greek version of Tiamat was Demeter, which is why we have the term diameter, the cutting or the dividing a circle in 2, or split. This is how we became separated from our other half. The Egyptian terms these 2 parts as the Ka and the Ba, Kaaba. So lesson 90, Indira is seen in this rare plate, following the double cross, Thanet. Indara is Cain as well, and plays the role of Ra Marduk. Their descendants are a different breed created on the 8th day from dust, offspring of the ones who beguiled the pure world. And you see some interesting pictures there and how these symbols are still used. What self-aware spiritual entity would agree to a life of enslavement? I was enlightened and made aware of what is transpiring since my eyes have been open. I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. The Anunnaki see the earth, bound souls as slaves, criminals, deviants, prisoners of war, detested social and racial groups, nonconformists, and undesirables. The Hammurabi's Code, which later became the 10 Commandments, found also in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, became the guidelines issued to this race of souls to give them rules and conformity. Various plans have existed to keep us from reaching our real potential here. Through the art of convocation, Ninhursag, the Sumerian Hathor or Isis, was called the Great Cow. Legend says she is true power between and behind Ea. She was called the Carpenter, the Coppersmith, the Lady Potter. Interesting. Later, the name was changed to Gabriel, feminine, such as Gabriella. Gabriel appeared to the Virgin Mary, altering her, alerting her of her birth of the Christ child Jesus. In around 600 AD, she visited Muhammad, dictating the Quran to him. And we're going to get into this later because there's some different interesting things about it. She is a seraphim, meaning serpent of Raphim or Rephaim. Another Nephilim hybrid connection here. Another even connection because of the L sounds in the Ra to Saturn again. Gabriel used a caduceus rod to translate the soul of Christ along with the Holy Ghost into the blood of Mary. It helps to see this advanced technology of spirit insemination here. And, look at the pictures. But she's always holding, and this is reason number 91, the caduceus staff was in fact a type of Anunnaki technology used to transfer spirits into matter and manipulate energy through the vibrations of the carrier. Again, the level of mind control brought forth here is profound, since we are taught that we are all children of Abraham, and we have all descended from the 12 tribes of Israel. For some, this may be true. But let us not forget, Abraham had a father also, and while they were all in Ur of the Chaldeans, you had Nubians populating Africa, Asians in the Orient, and various other races that had never even heard of Abraham. The Bible speaks of a Genesis, a man and a woman created on the 6th day in the image of God, and another set on the 8th day from dust. The difference between these two creations was one had spirit compassion and the other one was very base. This is the main drawback of genetic manipulation. Many underlings of the other race of Adams, of whom care more for material prosperity and could care less about a dying word, helping children, etc. Still others are now mixed with both. There is obviously a silent war going on between at least two separate races here. And when I say races, I'm not talking about color. Now, looking deeper into the K9 affiliations, just to clarify, the dog itself is a domesticated wolf. So what we are really dealing with here are wolves, which fits the term, wolves in sheep's clothing. Sheep's clothing is a metaphor for the human body. In Canaan, which has its roots in the word Cain, canine, K9, and others relating to the canine species, there had obviously been some interaction with the wolf, later domesticated into dog. This interaction can be looked at no different than the Chinese and the dragon, in which they claim in their ancient tales were their original descendants. To explain many things that have drawn a blank to most historians, it may be necessary to look further into the true meanings here of the animist involvement in various nations. Following the pagan tradition, many would leave their young in the woods around packs of wolves to see if they would take the baby as their own. Of course, this led to hundreds of babies being torn apart by packs of wolves. It is said some were taken into the packs of wolves, and the she-wolf would care for them. And we've seen things in modern day. This has happened. It is said at times, when seeing these young, full-grown, in the forest, that they had inherited all the traits of the wolf. just as the shaman might follow certain animals around to gain their traits. This gave birth to the mythology of the werewolf or the lichen. Reason 92, Romulus, where Rome gets its name from, killed his brother Remus. They were both suckled by a she-wolf who found them abandoned in the wild. Scriptures say the Nephilim that roamed the earth during the time the humans were created sinned against the woman and began to sin against the beasts. What I have more than enough evidence to prove is that the statement meant some sort of insemination between animal and demigod that brought forth what we would call all of the mythological creatures. In the old days, they became revered, feared, worshipped. It can be proven many of these beings make up the tales of all the ancient mythology, when the centaurs and the cyclops and the Cthulhu and various other part man, part god, part animal creatures roam this earth. This is known as the abomination. In addition, it states in ancient texts that these creatures died, that they had souls, that they did not perish but roamed upon the face of the earth, and man called them evil spirits, and they could be evoked, called. This is the accounts, I think, that can be found in the books of Enoch, the first man to write about God of the Bible, and what was taking place during those times. Interestingly enough, I think, his books didn't make it into publication and remained in the esoteric circles for hundreds of years. The list of names of the fallen angels located in the book of Enoch are very important to the elite for evocation, calling. Reason 93, some of the offspring of the Nephilim were reptilian and amphibian hybrids. They lived much longer and became kings. This is how the bloodlines began. The intermingling with women continued in order to spawn successors. And we will continue right after the break. Welcome back, everyone. So, whether or not we look at this shamanistically, because shaman all over this planet talk about gathering the essence of the elements, trees, animals, the spirits of them, and incorporating them into themselves. We have probably millions of pictures of something part man, part human, part animal, and gods. Gods. So we're at a point now that we can genetically manipulate ourselves. We've probably been there for a while, but it was just released last week that they can take any cell and manipulate it with any other cell. So that means from plant, from animal, from human, from anything out there. So with all of the ancient technology, and I think we're all at the point that we realize we're not being told what we have done before in the past. I kind of steer away from the alien influence, other than I realize 100% that the planets influence us, and somebody else believes in that, so that's good enough for me. It's not per se that I'm saying there's aliens out there, but the belief in them has caused things to come forth that we'd have been better off never playing with. So the offspring of the Nephilim, we see reptilian, we see amphibian, we see all kinds of things. And we've talked about how the ruling classes think they are from these beings. They intermingled with women, and women are very important in all of the ancient rituals, all of them. They always go to a woman, always. So they're spawning their successors. Whether we're talking about spirit essence or actual DNA. It's not far a step for me to believe that too. Look at the difference as we form. We start off as a seed. It looks like a seed. So we actually transform to just about everything there is on this planet. So it's not a big step for me. If we even just look at it like that, and it looks like our ancestors on one level or another knew this. Did they mess with DNA? It looks like we've been messed with. Like, the longer we go on, it seems like every week now we're coming up with a new species of human. All the time now, that aren't quite like us. Why, with our small bodies, small, furless, relatively weak bodies, would we be in charge of everything right now? We are, of course, doing a really good job of wiping everything else out, but it makes no sense that us, as we look like, should be in control. It doesn't. You know, they've talked a lot about our intermixing with Neanderthal DNA, and there's a lot of different kinds of Neanderthals, but they just kind of humped them into one big group, because I guess they don't want to say there were many different types of human beings, and they're close enough, we got to call them that, like us. And they're putting them all in a group so they can say they're other. They're still not calling them same like us, just different physically. They want us to think they're lesser. So, anyway, the ruling powers have clearly sprung forth with either from ancient Egypt or their ancient Egyptian ideals. So a little Egypt 101 wouldn't hurt. Great pyramids point to the Sirius star, more commonly known as the Dog Star in Canis Minor. January 1st, Sirius reaches the meridian point at exactly midnight. This is, of course, the beginning of the Gregorian year. So obviously they're looking at it, so it's important, at least to them. In Egypt, this was the most important star, and we've talked about the dog days before. It is not only the brightest star in the sky, it can also be seen anywhere in the world, which many stars cannot. The Egyptian called this star the goddess Subtet, pictured riding side saddle on a large dog. At times it was an actual dog, but sometimes it was other things. She is known as the wife of Osiris, who is Orion. She is also known under the same star as Sothis and Sophis, which were Greeks, where the Greeks got their term Sophia from their channel of illumination, I guess. Sophia was the exact equivalent to the Holy Ghost, and Shekinah, which is the power Jesus used to bring about miracles, along with a wooden staff passed from Aaron. It is in the actual Egyptian text. Isis, Thosis, is noted giving birth to the morning star Venus. The morning star is Jesus of Nazareth. As the bust Isis says, I am Isis, I have brought forth the sun, S-O-N and S-U-N. Now, reason 94. The pyramids of Egypt are a portal to Sirius, and also Amati, the underworld. Once again, Sirius is indicated by the five-pointed star. This would mean all using the five-pointed stars are evoking the energy of Sirius, which spells the underworld in the afterlife. The Atlanteans, now this is from their stories, built the Egyptian pyramids as temples and portals to the deities worshipped in Atlantis. Atlantis means is, daughter of Atlan. It is a fact that pantheism can be really confusing at times, which it was created to do. Since the Egyptians had over 3,000 gods and goddesses, there are a lot of confusion all the time in Egypt. There had to have been too. With the advent of so many people entering Egypt, the local gods of the Egyptians were always picked up by surrounding tribes who admire the Egyptians' success, crediting it to their patron god, thus becoming devout worshippers. There is a constant seesawing back and forth between Osiris and Horus and Isis and Ra. Consider how many servants are in the world versus masters. The gods abound, and the humans are left powerless and made to serve. These serpent dynasties never stopped ruling. They simply branched out, and led setting up hierarchies and pyramid systems of control everywhere. They could subdue the people by war. They roam about the land seeking who they could devour, leaving a trail of blood from the Delta to the Americas, all across Africa, everywhere they touched. And I have some pictures of the pantheon of gods in Egypt. There's an incredible amount of them, and images for them and these things. So, reason 95. The various demigods of Egypt were of the lineage of ancient Atlantis. Other deities, such as the African bees, became part of the pantheism due to the power credited to him by worshippers in Africa. And that's B-E-S, bees. Egypt absorbed all the powerful deities throughout this land, all of Africa. And you have to remember, Upper and Lower Egypt. Lower Egypt is Ethiopia. And it looks like there were even ruins of them in South Africa too. Same gods, same kind of imagery, same kind of looking at, pointing to Sirius. So it was, look at all of Egypt, which is huge. Look at all of Egypt as all of Africa. That way would be easier, because everything was absorbed and people moved as people do. So people became wholly dependent upon serving and caring for the gods, who often manifested as royal families, one way or another. Generally, they were trained in techniques of mental power, always given a rod to intensify these powers. To the people, they had the power of gods. Everything that is living first examines what it was before, so it knows what to become. This is what a cell does. This can be seen in even microscopic life forms. This means that if they tell us lies about what happened in the history of the world, as a race, we face not only heavy mental alteration, but also possible extinction. We are changed by their words. Abracadabra. We are not continuing on a true cycle here. As I explained before about descending, the real zodiac gives a pretty accurate layout of your character, but we have the ability to change our ways permanently, thus altering our DNA. This is the marvel of the human race. Now realize again, and you can see the articles I've put up about this, we have been trapped in a certain how do we even say it? A certain astrological makeup, which is false. When they tell you, for instance, if you were born end of March, Mid-April you were an Aries. That would have been true if you were born in 1 AD. It is not true now. The skies move, planets move, we move. So, myself, who was told I'm an Aries, and maybe have manifested some personality of Aries, I'm actually not an Aries. I'm a Pisces. We are all one astrological sign before what they tell us. You know? So, if they've told you you're an Aries, you're a Pisces. You're a Pisces, I think you're Aquarius. So, jump back 1 month. So realize we have been entirely manipulated. They want to keep us in that mindset of 1 BC. Know this before we continue. It's part of the alteration. Now, considering how long this charade of playing God has been going on, this may be the first time, at least in this segment, that such knowledge of the inner workings of our society has been placed right in our hands. Not to mention that this is probably the first time a mass of people are at the comprehension level to at least grasp what is happening. In the history of man, the masses have been powerless and with little intellect because we were kept like that, and that's how they want to bring us back. They want us boxed. This is why, we bury our people in a box. We work in cubes. A lot of us live in square buildings to be boxed. Jumping kind of a side note here. This is Sudoku. This is the magic squares. This is why they want us to play those games. And, I admit Sudoku is fun. When I used to go into the hospital for my relapses, I actually would sit and play Sudoku thinking this was helping my mind work. Oh, it certainly was. Maybe that's why my relapses lasted for months. Maybe I was opening a portal. And again, these boxes, these numbers, these sets of 8, the intertwined serpent, this energy locks us. And again, it's just another way we've been locked. And they want us to think we're powerless. The human mind, which I mentioned before, is more like a wheel turning. When we get set into habits, it creates a groove in the brain. Deeper grooves are habits that have been practiced for longer periods. This is where terms like stuck in a cycle or getting into the groove of things it comes from, since a cycle can also be looked at as a wheel. It is also observed, and we've talked about this many times, it takes 22 days to make or break a habit, good or bad. 21 days of practice, 22nd day, you're changed. Which has the effect of allowing the grooves to flatten back out. It takes that long to acclimatize to a new environment. So even if you were born in, someplace really nice and warm, which I'm thinking of right now, Canada is frickin' freezing right now, Ontario anyway, takes these 22 days to move from Jamaica up here. And even though you'll probably never like the cold, your body will be physically able to handle it if you go out and accept the cold. Different times, a little bit more every day. If you do that, you'll change. So the human mind becomes a record with grooves, basically playing oftentimes the same vibrational song every day. The first thing you realize during any kind of astral travel is that you are not the body. You are more like the alien on the movie Men in Black that is very small but powerful, sitting in the operation seat of the giant body. Something like an organic Montauk chair. The other thing you will notice when you look down upon your body is that Obviously, your memory and your senses are not contained in that body because you are using them. And if you're thinking, well, I have never astral traveled, we all have. It's that place we go just before we're falling asleep, just before we're waking up. Let me give you an example of that. Have you ever thought before you went to bed, you have some important interview or there's something you have to do first thing in the morning? You hear the alarm clock, you get up, you go put on the coffee, you go have a shower, you come and get dressed, you walk out the door, and then all of a sudden there's no friggin' floor and you fall down. And then you wake up and find that everything you've just done didn't really happen. Well, what really happened is you just astral traveled. You just did it. And I think just about everyone has had this experience at least once. So still with me? Your senses are not contained in your body, or none of that could have happened. None of it. This is one secret of obtaining a higher character. Even if you do not think you have astral traveled before, knowing that you are not the body releases you from many of the expectancies of normal life, gives you an entire other framework, the soul, to build on. When you have dreams, if you notice the sheer detail that is involved in the environment, you realize that we are a lot more than they are letting out about. We are capable of amazing things. There's even part of our mouth that makes 3 different types of saliva for different situations. It becomes obvious that we are not in a Ford with standard parts. We have been fashioned with bells and whistles that we just don't explore. This knowledge of enhancing the body has been selflessly and selfishly kept by the elite alchemists. But we are now hacking Orpheus. In a moment, he will tell us everything. Most are completely unconscious of who they were in former lives. Sometimes we get glimpses of it in dreams. Often smells and sounds remind us of something we remember but can't wholly identify. The Sacred Order of the Marys, in fact, had unlocked the secret of certain essential oils that had the ability to regress anyone smelling them into memories of their past. The loss of collective life memory has everything to do with how strong your spirit is when it departs from this world. We are living in a time where if you look deep enough, you can find most of this information. This is all we need, and possibly all we will ever get. I see it as useless to keep coming into lives in which we have no knowledge of our previous experiences. Best advice I could give any listener is to begin working and growing your spirit, which we will talk about as we go along. Now I realize that much of what I do here is repeating the same thing, just trying to weave the story a little deeper. Symbols will be next. The elite, as we have talked about before, communicate in symbols and designs which are far more powerful than words. Always have been. We like pictures. We do. These markings are embedded in our consciousness and serve as triggers for various emotions and concepts, just like a smell. Just like when they spray fresh cookie smell in a house they want to sell quickly, or the new car smell, even though it's toxic. It reminds you of things. Happy times. So I will take this time to tell you that you should not become a warrior when you begin to discover what is going on, and anger or vengeance moves you to combat it directly. You should always keep your weapons in your mind, not in your hand. Warrior also means a person who worries, worrier. so much once they figure out how much strength and cunning the other side possesses, that they actually send energy to these negative forces when they become overwhelmed and behave foolishly. I found out talking about the news, which is always one-sided, and we're never getting the whole story, and it made myself sick. Something was eating my energy. When we lose energy, something is taking it. And unfortunately, as much as I'd like to blame anything else or everything else, I know that they cannot take what I do not give. It goes for you too. Now remember, what we face as a society of people, wherever you live, is something that we all must confront at some point. One cannot fix this world on their own, but each person can do their part by getting out information of the truth, even if it's just getting it out into their own selves. This way, those who are still confused can make up their mind as to which side resonates with them, so they can go about it fully and not half-heartedly. The whole construct of what I'm talking about is not down to any religion, race, or belief system. I'm not trying to down anything. It should be a detailed observation, not a judgment. Book of Revelations, it said, "How I wish you were hot or cold, but you are lukewarm, and I shall vomit you out of my mouth." This means that individuals should not straddle the fence. Whatever they are going to be, they should get on with it. Do it. This whole activity of truth seeking does wonders for our complete growth, and it should be looked at just like that. Everything you have experienced will all come to your aid one way or another when you have a purpose to relearn that, re-see that, remember that. Let everything you do have a purpose. Let no minute be wasted, even if that minute is painful. We can grow the strongest during our pain. It's not when things are perfect that we grow. It's when things are hard. We have to find our purpose. We have to find our inner strength. We become greater during trials. So look at it that way. Everything is a growth process, and everything is needed. With this information, you now have a chance at saving yourself and perhaps others too. The last thing you want to do is become so scared you don't even want to know anymore. You end up in the corner sucking your thumb, rocking back and forth. In the unknown, you can be found because you have not yet discovered your true self. Obviously, because you are not even flying, or at least floating yet, but know that you are never lost. You are always there. The feeling of loss just means you're confused, but you're not lost. I just give this pointer because fear is indeed the mind controller, the little death. You are stopped at times from learning anything because of an internal feeling of death and the lies about what really happens after death. Many people hold on to their religious preferences because they feel it will somehow save them in the end, even though they break most of the rules of most of the religions. It would suffice to say, to know that when you die, you go to a place corresponding to your mentality, your frequency, hence the term judgment or judging of the mental. Society has been trained to love lure and ceremony. Thus, the preacher with a fiery sermon gets more attention than sometimes the boring metaphysic who is explaining how the body really works. The miracle they are so busy ranting about to make it seem like such a big deal. individuals begin to need their powers in order to survive. That is the pressure placed on us in the end of this segment: evolve or face extinction. Once the metal portal is reopened, the person becomes open-minded. Again, most of the instructions, activations, and experiences happen during sleep. If you were completely transported from this world, never to return, it would take place in your sleep. It is unclear what happens to your body here. Some say it continues as if it was you and behaves just like you through some residual memories, actions, reactions, your cells telling it what to do. People never know that you're really gone. In Egypt, where much of this is amplified, we find the cult of Isis. Many believe with the masculinity of the pharaohs, the women played only roles as normal queens, called by them Furts. In all actuality, the Egyptian empire functioned as a trinity, and the female part of the trinity became absorbed under Isis. To maintain it as a trinity, all the other gods and goddesses were summed up under the main epoch, I guess. Clearly, Osiris, Horus, and Isis make up the Egyptian trinity. Sin, Shamus, and Ishtar make up the Babylonian. Isis represents Nurseg, Ninala, Inanna, Ishtar, Ma'at, Mer, Mary, Nut, Nephis, Hathor, Diana, Asheroth, Aster, Aphrodite, Athena, Turt, Bast, Inda, Balath, Anaheris, Asher, Sophia, Sothis, Sabines, Sakina, Magdalena, Europa, Ganymede, many others. This became possible because of the so-called God, S, with a little quotation mark against an S, female energy that equated to the enlightened portion of spiritual training. So when an initiate came in contact with the actual spirit of the religion, it often personified itself as one of these goddesses, who all remained under the same umbrella. This is why, even to this day, Isis, under many forms, is still worshipped heavily. The Statue of Liberty is another rendition of Isis. Her main sign is the $sign, which is the word Isis compressed, again, into a symbol. Some of the countries of origin are Assyrian Ishtar, Phoenician Azeroth or Aster or Astarte, Syrian Derketo or Atargetis, Babylonian Belit or Belita, Arabian Elat or Al-Elat. Again, their home is the asteroid Venus, Sirius, and the Pleiades. Their species seems to be completely foreign, hiding under the guise of illuminating warrior goddess. In ancient texts, it says a fragment landed in the river Euphrates, shaped like an egg. Somehow, those who interacted with this egg became infused and infected with its essence. Those infected became the first communicators of the knowledge and the message these beings brought to Earth. These are also the beings in movies like The V and Knowing are describing. They have an agenda to take over the world completely, and they have major assistance from just about every main religion and social group here right now. This is due in part to the powerful role they play in religion. The natural instinct for man is to gravitate towards a mother goddess figure that comes from our separation of our other half. We want to interact with the magical feminine being. This is played on and exploited by these imposters, some of whom are responsible for the initial split, or Maya, as it's more popularly called, Buddhist kind of traditions. In addition, for the woman, since again the god S is androgynous, he gives her the son of the sun. She begins to see this as her husband, protector, father figure. Most women are deprived of one or the other, if not both, in today's common society. There's obviously not just one faction doing all this. You would have to think man and woman are very advanced species. It would take a collaborative effort to keep them in the darkness of what the true reality really is. Reason 96. There is a saying, the devil has many names. I found first that to be untrue when learning who Satan was, especially since Satan and Lucifer are actually two different beings. When considering Isis, however, it starts to make sense. This is how the recurring Savior theme exists. The key component is always the mother with Immaculate Conception. Immaculate Conception is really the deity having some type of intercourse with the woman, producing an offspring. This offspring then attempts to become ruler of the world in his father, the king's seed. Many of the hyperdimensional beings want the title of Lord of Earth, or Ea. So they never cease these divine conception stories. This happens now through royal families, still, such as Prince William becoming the next king. Their family history, however, is riddled with the involvement of various forces. They are carrying the bloodlines, so they are most certainly are not completely human. I do believe we have something in constitutions about that. What a joke. We as human beings are utterly ruled over in this dimension. Our needs are completely meager compared to what we originally entitled to. Yet these needs are seldom fulfilled. These forces also extend into the dream world and the afterlife, so there is no rest for the weary. As we go into our boxes and get transported through Saturn, Satan, until they are confronted, they are constantly hatching plans to make the individuals believe none of this is going on. Somewhat of this strange zombie phase, I guess. And I tell you now that you can live every day in such a high state of energy that these beings are jealous and cannot do the same. They are forbidden from it. It has gone asleep in them, never to awaken again because of their corruption. All the blending, the enhancements, and the greed for power has made them dumb. They don't even feel alive. They are the undead. And this is why that kind of agenda is being pushed, for us to have all of these scientific upgrades. Because our bodies are the one thing that we can take care of here. Not that we're doing it, but the more we corrupt, the more we're going to feel corrupted. Now the state of what you can return to is not just a feeling of everything going well, but the feeling of having the perfect companion. Something so gratifying that everything external, does not take an inkling of attention from it, as if it does not already exist. We are standing in this state, and we are told that we are needy. You become, though wholly endowed with it, spiraling towards together, forming endlessly states of ecstasy, if you want, and joy. Their most powerful weapons are their religions. This gives them the power directly from our own souls. It is time they were removed. I'm not sure if this will take place in large numbers. However, I am sure that it does not matter. It is what you do individually that counts. There is a lesser light which emits from below that spawns countless distorted images. Soon will be placed in shoal, in which we fixed a door for entrance and none for exit. Then the world will see freedom, if you but knew. Many looking now will say, he is joking, but we do not jest. Now, unveiling the goddess will take place again with Madame Blavatsky. She claimed that's what she was doing when she wrote her book, The Isis Unveiled. She, of course, was in no such position to do anything like this, being fully initiated herself. And remember, their oath is to keep silent. And it's like the oath of the Jesuits, to serve the Dark Father. However, they are allowed to push propaganda and disinformation. That's why so many people copy her word for word. Again, Jordan Maxwell, and that's not his real name. Jordanian Maximus comes from her writings. And a lot of his ideas of what the temple is and things like that are word for word hers. So is Thessarian. So are many of the truth tellers right now. Fool Society, Temple of Lucifer, Saturn again. Once again, the goddess as we know it was a play on words. There is actually a symbolic story being told about Adam and Eve in the garden with the serpent. It is known that this story should not be taken literally, but has a deeper meaning. It started with an uneasy feeling that there was something that was a big secret about the word woman. You find omen in the remaining part of the name, meaning a deep, hidden meaning. Eve is the root of the word evening. The Hebrew version is even weirder because the name used for Eve in Hebrew was Have, which actually means serpent. According to the original Zohar, a major root of the creation story here, becomes clear that the serpent in the garden was a female serpent, not a male, like is commonly believed. The pre-Adamites, or before Adam, were masculine beings called sons of the sun, who took physical form and mated with these women. These female serpents, known as the race of Nama and Lilith, caused the chief angels like Asa and Azrael to fall from their post and mix with them. The Zohar continues to blame Amalek as a wicked seraphim, while Metatron is called literally the good serpent. This is incredible. It admits Metatron is actually a serpent and goes on to admit that Enoch became Metatron once he was translated into heavens. Thus Enoch was also a serpent. Several times the tribe of Shem makes it clear to indicate that they inbred with serpents. This makes it concrete when the Enochians are linked with the serpents. It says, the priest came forth from the dead Sophanim who died in labor. The baby was born with the sign of the priesthood, which was a lustrous, scaly hide. The baby had been brought forth, sat upright immediately, and showed the sign of the priesthood, and they were struck in terror. In many Hebrew texts it says, He created man. To them, he is a female attribute. The Tetragrammaton is Yod He Vav He. The Yod, Yah, is a masculine fire entering the feminine He, giving birth to the child Va, V, and the world will return to He, so they believe. Cohen, Hebrew for priest, is also an anagram for Enoch. Reason 97, thousands of children every year are indoctrinated into animist religions, depriving them of their true potential. One of the most widespread religions in the world is Judaism. Still keeps Moses' depiction with horns on its head. Kabbalist tree of life is the same tree from the garden of the serpent offered the so-called fruit from. This fruit is signified as an apple, which has a pentagram in its center when cut in half. As I said earlier, that pentagram is a symbol of Isis, Sirius, Sothos, and her consorts, also her opposite. When inverted, they are together, not separate, which we address when it's proper. So, someone once said that if you ask a person for an explanation and it becomes very confusing, it means they do not know themselves or they're hiding and lying from you. When asking someone in India, teaching through Hinduism, or someone in Judaism teaching the Kabbalah, how to increase union with the Most High, you are buried in 1,000-page Gitas with confusing Sanskrit words, or mile-long strolls of rabbis with nothing better to do than to take one page from the Torah or the Talmud and make 1,000-page explanation. Truly, do you believe it is that hard to enhance the spirit? Of course not. These people are placed in the way to make the journey lengthy and hard. As I have said before, many have not obtained what they originally looked for, which is freedom. Now they are enslaved by the religion and their subconscious wishes to have company in their misery. Sothos, Sirius. Reason 98. The five-pointed star is not the symbol of the perfect man. It is a star of contact for Sirius and all various beings that make up the pentagram, including the inverted. These featherweights think the Most High has left word never to return, and they are having a free-for-all on our behalf. They know not. Even we watch, the all-seeing eye, again, bottom of Saturn. Looking through ancient times, the moon was actually not feminine, but masculine. The moon went by sin and in many ways, the god Es shows that it is actually androgynous serpent. Many women become moon goddess to link with more women that are about healing and tapping into the feminine power, which is of course wonderful. However, I have seen the start and finish of these groups, and it always leads to initiations, and when you reach the height of these organizations, like those in the Mount S. Shasta or S. Sedona, just like the ancient S. Sakura, they go deeper into forms of yoga like Hatha, Hathar, giving the neophytes strange names with false meanings to chant while opening chakras, doing these things such as imagining thousands of Buddhas filling their souls. Then they tell you it's all really Hinduism and it's the power of Manti, and you learning to wield the Shakti. The serpent energy comes into play heavily with the Shiva. The person is subtly lulled to sleep while the flute plays, with the lies that the serpent just means complete wisdom. Yes, the serpent has a lot of wisdom, and it has been fooling man and woman with it, with the helps of hybrids and traitors to the human race. And of course, many men joined the cult of the goddess, imagining that it was a haven for beautiful forest queens, who, when approaching, or should I say flowing towards you, bathed you in swells of spring marigolds as rabbits and deer bound behind them, joyously laughing, singing in delicate waves of solfeggio. The serpents would, of course, create the illusion long enough for the person to be lulled into said trap. They eventually became so laden with negative spirits they are deluded and confused. The Masons, Rosicrucians, Ishmaelantes, Hasidians are primary examples of these organizations that have tricked the spiritual arm of men with this type of nonsense. The most they could produce was the debased Bacchania. I encourage women to keep yourselves on guard, just to show you how much a serpent is suggesting that it made things look at the powers of these words. S, spiral, right? When you go out in the ocean, you see shells. You will see the spiral force. You will watch the waves of energy. You will see the spiral force. When you look at your fingertip, you will see the spiral force. All the way to the swirl in your head, you will see the spiral force. It is safe to say that our Creator uses the spiral force when making things. No straight lines. S, spirit, the eternal being of consciousness. S, sphere, our cellular level exists completely of spheres. S, spin, another word to describe the spiraling motion. Soul, and soul, S-O-L, the life force of heat, warmth, and vitality. As discussed before, S is a primary symbol of the serpent in English. Of these forces, like the sun, the soul, and the spiral, other names that did not begin with S, is simply motion. However, when 70 languages were introduced across the world, they all received the indoctrination of the S, says the vibration. Thus a false relation to the serpent that permitted the subconscious mind and permeated it. This mind control technique makes it easier for us to go with the story that is being told more and more, which is the serpents are our creators. A serpent has no voice box, can only whisper. Thus everything sounds like s. There are sometimes called the whispering ones. Famous prayer in Islam says, Allah protect me from the whisperings of Shaitan. Number 99. Adanuri is androgynous and keeps a serpent around the neck, as most of all Hindu figures. Hermes, the thrice-born, was Thoth, also androgynous. The joining of the masculine and feminine were taken to these vulgar literal levels as another deterrent for the true spiritual unity here. Hindu teachings, one is taught to work with the root chakra up. Thus, much of their teachings is based on tantrics and the manipulation of sexual energy. Many are now saying proper ancient teachings was from the crown chakra down, thus the person escapes the trap of getting stuck in the animalistic carnal phases, which is often happening when the lower chakras are turned on before the higher ones. This is why many New Age leaders, such as Ray Al, are heavily into sexual expression rather than mental and spiritual enlightenment. Their doctrines are based on sexual freedom, which feels good, but does not feed the original desire of enhancement here. To understand these entities is to realize that the world is a lot more diverse than they are revealing to you, and that we are not the only intelligent life form here by far. Here's a big example. United States went to the moon, which happened although, well, not when they filmed it. The speech that was written for Neil Armstrong read thus: "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," was the difference between man and mankind, that they must be separated. Could they be possibly alluding to something here about another race, like we pointed out in Genesis? Furthermore, what kind of man leaps? Of course, I know the answer, but I'll leave you to do the brain work. If you can't figure it out, well, I'll tell you tomorrow. It'll come. The legend of Isis is always with Anubis, the dog-faced god, said to be a protector. And we'll continue this on Thursday. I hope you enjoyed it, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Remember, we're all listener supported, and